Welcome to When Football Began Again, the podcast that takes a nostalgic look at the Premier League era. Hello and welcome to episode 18 and the final episode in this first series of When Football Began Again, the podcast that takes a nostalgic look at the Premier League era. Today's show is a deserted island matches special with Charlie Edinburgh, son of the late Justin Edinburgh and founder of the JE3 Foundation in his dad's name. In it, we talk about how Charlie and his family are coping as we approach the 4th anniversary of the tragic passing of his dad. We talk about the work of the charity and the incredible impact that they're making. And of course, he shares some of his unforgettable matches. And as you can imagine, the memory of his dad is a theme running all the way through that. It's an emotional chat in places. Obviously, it's approaching 4 years since Charlie lost his dad, and it is still very raw for him and his family. But it's also an inspirational chat. They've created an incredible legacy for Justin. The good that they are doing in placing defibrillators and petitioning for Justin's law to ensure that we get defibrillators in all places where sports take place is inspiring. All the links to this are in the comments. We're going to talk about it at some length. I would implore you at the end of this show to please go and sign Justin's law and support this fantastic charity as best you can. We're going to jump straight into it though today. This is Deserted Island Matches with Charlie Edinburgh. Joining me today for a very special episode to discuss their Deserted Island matches and talk about the hugely important work of the Justin Edinburgh 3 Foundation is its founder, Charlie Edinburgh. Charlie, welcome to the show. How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Carl. Thanks for having me on. Been excited to do this, especially when I see the questions coming through. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to having a good chat with you today.
Me too. I'm really looking forward to finding out your matches. Before, as way of introduction, obviously, your entire life, you've been surrounded by football. Sort of what your earliest memories of football, and at what kind of age did you realise that maybe not everybody's dad was quite as good at football as yours was?
Well, my earliest memories of football would be going to White Hart Lane to watch my dad. Probably didn't actually appreciate it, as you say, until I was probably 3-4 years of age. But literally from a matter of weeks after me being born, every other week I was taken to White Hart Lane. And yeah, I mean, I think it's the stuff of every young aspiring footballer's dream is to play at the very top level. And the fact that I had a dad that was able to do that. Unfortunately, I didn't quite get the lucky genes, as they say, to go on and have a career like he did. But look, it's unbelievable. And it's a question I get asked quite often, really, is, how does it feel to have a dad that was a footballer or a football manager? And I don't sort of just brush it off, but I didn't know any different. And the same way, I've got friends whose dads are working in banking or plumbers and electricians. It's just the natural of what you're born into, and you just sort of go along with it, really. And you're there to support him and the family, as we all do. We're a very positive, upbeat family that are always going to go along on that journey with him. So it was, unbelievable to have that father figure who was in the game.
Before we do get into the matches you picked, obviously it is approaching 4 years since your dad Justin so tragically lost his life after suffering a cardiac arrest. He was just 49. Since then, with the support of your family and the many friends that he had within football, you've created a foundation in his name. So first things first, how are you doing? How are your family doing? And has all this positive work that you've been doing helped in dealing with obviously the terrible things you've been through as a family?
Yeah, it's I think for me personally, if you're obviously speaking to me, I have my ups and downs like everybody. I think you're always grieving him. I don't think until you've actually lost somebody. I'm very much like the normal, but there's so many of my friends and who haven't actually lost a loved one, and you're sort of in this cocoon and you're protected and you think life's all, hunky-dory. But unfortunately, until you tragically lose somebody close to you, such as a father figure, it really does have an effect on you. And yeah, I mean, you only have to think about the things that he's going to miss out on in the future, and you do feel a little bit robbed. A little bit's probably putting it lightly, but as I say, as a family, we are very tight knit. We pull each other through the good and the bad, and we're okay. I mean, I can't quite comprehend that it's going to be 4 years in just over a month's time. And it's always a difficult time of year for us because we know what's coming. We know what the outpouring of support and emotion will be once again, because yes, he was my dad, and it probably touches a little bit on your previous question. What was it that so many people loved him? And we didn't probably realise that until, unfortunately, he passed away. You see the outpouring from not just the footballing world, but people outside of that. And yeah, it's a tough day. It's always a tough day, his anniversary. I look at it in a positive. I do. I'm different to my mum and my sister, who tend to find it particularly hard, as I do. But I find it quite comforting, flicking through social media, seeing tributes that people will put out there, the clubs that he played for, players that he played with, family, friends, just coming together to remember what a great man he was and how much he had to give. So all in all, we're doing okay. Obviously, the charity has just gone from strength to strength. It really, really has. And I don't think we was quite prepared just for how well received it would be. It was really, really important for me to have that focus early on in the grieving process, I think, because I've spoken with a lot of people in a similar boat to me that have lost loved ones, and they ask the question, how do you do it? Or what do you do? I sort of went the other way and fell by the wayside. And that's normal too. People have their own way and their own coping mechanisms. But I think for me, in terms of, mentally getting myself back on track, it allows me to speak about him every day. It allows me to continue his legacy. And ultimately, the most rewarding thing about doing this full time is, we're saving people's lives, and we're giving people the opportunity that my dad hasn't had to continue to be with us as a family, his friends. And I think it's the ripple effects that has, So the fact that we've been able to save lives with the work that we're doing so far, we've given dads, sisters, brothers, uncles, aunts more time with their loved ones. And I don't think there's anything more rewarding than that.
And we're going to touch on what the foundation's achieved in the short time it's been around as we go through the show, but some fantastic work that you're doing. The first match to take to your deserted island is going to be a Premier League game involving Spurs. Which match would you take with you?
So I had to think long and hard. Obviously, I think what we'll tend to find throughout this is, much like you, Cole, I am a Spurs fan. And obviously, Dad played for the club for a number of years. So a lot of these games that we're going to speak about, I did have him at the forefront of it. The game that I've gone for, Premier League game featuring Tottenham, is the final game at White Hart Lane against Manchester United. 2-1 victory. Victor Wanyama and Harry Kane getting the goals. Again, a place that holds so many memories for me and my family growing up. Special place, full of unbelievable people. I mean, the game has obviously gone on now, and I remember, from being a 2-year-old, 3-year-old running around the creche in the players' lounge, and the staff that used to sort of take care of us. I'll give him a mention, Nick, who's he's actually head of security now. He does the tunnel security at Leyton Orient. Still a guy that we keep in contact with as a family, and that just goes to show that the connection and the bond that football has. He's seen me as a nipper right up to a 30-year-old man now, and we still speak about the special times and memories. But yeah, that final game at White Hart Lane, as I say, it's a special place. It was a great result. I think we had already secured our Champions League position for that season. But to go out on such a high there against, Man United, a team that have done so much for the Premier League, and, they sort of run riot for a whole load of time. So to beat a big club like Man United on the last game at that stadium, and then obviously the icing on top of the cake was there was a fantastic ceremony after that game whereby Dad was invited back as a legend of the club alongside, I'm talking greats. My dad, I probably don't give him enough credit because he is my dad, and I just think it's normal. But when you see him on the pitch with, some real legends of the club, it sort of takes your breath away, really, and just makes you realise what a top player he was and what he'd achieved with such a fantastic club with such rich history, you know. So that was special to see him on the pitch after the game, being applauded by unbelievable supporters. And yeah, I know just how much that day meant to him, because he would have been bursting with pride, and great for him to be back and see some old and familiar faces.
Yeah, fantastic. And what a game that was. And of course, the iconic image now, I think, is the rainbow. I think of, and as well, all the legends on the pitch, as you mentioned. I think most of them under clear umbrellas, because the weather didn't quite play on that day, did it? But then the rainbow kind of broke through. And and as Spurs fans, we all have huge fond memories of White Hart Lane. But yeah, you were within the inner sanctum of it, I guess, so often as a kid growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned that Dad. I've actually got the video still on my phone now, just that he would send to me, and him on the pitch underneath one of them umbrellas, and you can hear a few of the lads going, "Oh, it's typical Tottenham. We're getting rained on our last day." But I think that's Spurs, and it's a beautiful image, as you say, of the rainbow with all of the flags waving. It's just that was the special place that it was, and only that would happen at White Hart Lane, I would imagine. But yeah, so many memories, and it's just listen. The new stadium, I've been on a number of occasions. It's absolutely breathtaking. You know, a lot of these modern stadiums, I feel, have lost that sort of, I don't know what the word is, but that sort of link between the old stadiums and the new stadiums. But the fact that we're so close to the pitch still, and listen, the club needed to propel forward. Look, the results at the moment on the pitch and the way the season's gone this year, I'm sure probably people listening to me now will probably laugh and say, well, the club hasn't really gone forward. It has, with a new training ground and an unbelievable stadium. All the foundations are there for it to really kick on. It's just, I think, a matter of time now, and things being sorted out at the top end. I think we need to have a bit of a regroup and a plan in place that's clear. And hopefully in the not too distant future, Tottenham will be back to the glory days.
Absolutely, I agree with all of that. So coming back to the foundation, so the JE3 Foundation has three main purposes. Let's start with the first one. You want legislative change so that all sports and leisure venues have access to a defibrillator. So what does a defib do? Why is it so important in the instance of a cardiac arrest?
Yeah, so for those that don't know, my dad suffered a cardiac arrest suddenly in a gym. The staff, unfortunately, weren't quick enough to recognise that this was a cardiac arrest that he was suffering. The gym wasn't equipped with a defibrillator, and the nearest one was 7 minutes away in a local shopping centre. I was naive, like a lot of the country, unfortunately, a lot of the world, just with regards to difference between a heart attack and a cardiac arrest, and how vital early CPR, effective CPR and a defibrillation is. So with the JE3 Foundation, we're campaigning for that law change. We want to get that called Justin's Law. So, you know, we feel that whatever your sport, you should be safe. So I couldn't quite believe that my dad was in a gym of all places and they didn't have to have a defibrillator. When you look at it, people exerting themselves, people can go to gyms and other sports clubs in quite unfit condition. One, because they enjoy the sport that they're taking part in, but two, to improve their physical and mental health. And the fact that people can go in quite unfit conditions, to know that that safety blanket isn't there for them, I find bizarre and quite perverse, really. So we're setting out to achieve a goal whereby defibrillators by law have to be in places of sport. So it doesn't matter whether it's cricket pavilions, golf courses, gymnasiums, netball courts. We feel, as part and parcel of sort of standard procedure across the board, it's mandatory that they have a defibrillator, because in the event like what happened with my dad, and it's quite alarming, really. There's 30,000 out of hospital cardiac arrests in the UK each year, and there's a 1 in 10 survival rate, and that's poor. That's terrible. In fact, it's nowhere near good enough. But if we can get more of these pieces of equipment out there, and get people trained with the confidence and the knowledge of what to do, they're not difficult pieces of equipment to use. They literally talk you through step by step what you need to do. But in a distressing situation that someone would find themselves in where they need to use it, we just want to give people the confidence to know that they can't do any wrong. They're better to do something than nothing. And hopefully in years to come, we can see that 1 in 10 increase to maybe 3 in 10 or 4 in 10. But any progress that we can make from 1 in 10 is going to be better than that. So that's our long-term ambition with obviously Justin's law and getting that passed. And then at the moment, there's 2 other areas that we really sort of hone in on, and that's accessibility to Defibs. So funds raised through the charity is split between the campaign, putting defibrillators out there. So we get out into all different types of organisations, grassroots clubs, places that can't afford one would like one, just to benefit the community, really. Get Defibs out there and encourage people to learn and find out more about what these pieces of equipment do. So for any listeners that don't know about the JE3 Foundation, listen and have a look at our website. There's plenty of good information on there and ways that you can find out how you can apply yourself for your business if you might like one. But they are absolute game changers. There's no 2 ways about it. And the more of them that we can get out there, we've already saved a life with one of the Defibs that we've donated. And, you know, when we set out to do this, that was what we wanted to do. If we could save one person's life, then we've done Dad's legacy, the world of good. But then that only spurs you on to want to save more and more lives, obviously. And then another area that we sort of touched on was the CPR and defibrillator workshops that we offer. So again, we go in and offer the training. We go into schools, universities, grassroots clubs again, small businesses, large organisations, just to roll out the skill set, really. It's quite alarming. And as I say, it's nobody's fault. It's just a real naivety and lack of education in this country, the amount of people that have never done it or don't know what to do in that situation. So if we can add even the slightest bit or contribute the slightest bit to making a change and making survival rates in this country better, then JE3 will be doing a great job.
Incredible. Yeah, we're going to come to the second match for your deserted island now. So this is a non-Premier League game you take with you. So it can be in the cups, it can be in a division lower than the Premier League. What would you go for?
This was a really tricky one for a number of reasons. Obviously, every club that my dad's played for, managed, has got a special connection with us as a family and with my dad. There's no 2 ways about it. I stripped it back. I could have gone for a number of games. I narrowed it down to 2, and I'll get onto the one that I've finally chosen. I was going to go for Leyton Orient versus Braintree, but I think any Leyton Orient fan listening would it be in agreement that wasn't the best spectacle of a football match. It was pretty much done, albeit wasn't mathematically confirmed. It was going to take, a massive goal swing and a real sort of shock horror from Orient on the last day against bottom of the league Braintree, and it ended 0-0. Albeit that confirmed that Leyton Orient went up as champions. And I know that was such a fantastic achievement for my dad. But the game that I have gone for is Newport County versus Wrexham, which was the first all-Welsh final to be held at Wembley. And Dad's Newport County ran out victors on the day after a 25-year absence from the Football League. To guide them back via the playoffs was unbelievable. Such an unbelievable achievement. They really had been exiled and been a lot of hard work behind the scenes to get the club back to where it was. And to know that Dad was the man that sort of steered the ship and got them over that final line, really, and got them back into the Football League was such a proud moment. And I think what probably edged that for me is, funny enough, and I'm sure there's not many men in football that would do this for their sons, but my dad actually put me down as the assistant kit man on the team sheet for that game. So I got to sit on the bench at Wembley as a 18, 19-year-old boy, young man, and literally head and kick every ball. And it was actually so bizarre. Like, I was watching my dad at work, but on the highest of levels and under the most, immense amount of pressure. But to run out, it was a real tight, nervy game. But obviously 2 late goals from Christian Jolly and Aaron O'Connor that cemented it. It was just, I can't describe the feeling. It's indescribable. It's actually 10 years ago today, funny enough. It's the 10-year anniversary of that game, and I can't quite believe that. But you look back at photos and videos of that day now, and it's a memory and a moment that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life, that's for sure. So that was my game of choice. It could have been one of many, as I say, but Newport versus Wrexham just pipped it for me.
What an incredible experience. And yeah, to be watching it from the dugout and to win in those late circumstances, incredible. We're talking about another one of your dad's former clubs as well, in Leyton Orient. They've obviously been hugely supportive of the foundation's work, as of all of his former teams, I believe. But the O's have named a stand in his memory. I mean, you touched upon it a little bit, witnessing that love and respect that he was clearly held in by so many people. What's that been like? And also, what would he have made of it, do you think?
I say it now, Dad was such a larger than life character. And anyone that knows him that's listening will probably know he'd make some sort of joke about it. It's the least I deserved. Something like, but he would only be saying it in jest and in a joking manner. But I know he would be bursting with pride. Honestly, it's for me, I haven't got children of my own yet, but when I do in the future, to be able to take them to Brisbane Road and to sit them in that stand and explain to them that's who Grandad was, that's why Grandad has that, that's what Grandad achieved with this fantastic football club. I couldn't quite believe it when they announced that they was going to do it. Obviously, it's rich in history, that football club. There's some unbelievable people that are still working there now that have achieved, Martin Ling, who's director of the football at the club now, he's just achieved his third promotion in different roles within the club. But that's legendary status in his own right. But for Dad to have gone in and made the impact that he did in the short period of time, and Orient had been for a real tough period. I mean, they were on the cusps of getting promoted to the Championship, losing eventually in the League One playoff final on penalties. And then they just crashed through the leagues under new ownership, which was, we won't go into too much detail surrounding that. Everyone knows the state that the club was in. And Dad had worked so hard to establish himself as a Football League manager. And he found himself out of work after being sacked by Northampton, probably for the longest period of his career, both as a player and a manager, that he found himself out of football. So when the Leyton Orient job came up and they were on a run of 15 games without a defeat, without a win, and he told me he was going to put his name in the hat for that job, I said to him, "You're absolutely bonkers." I said, that club is going one way and one way only. And you've worked so hard to get to where you are now. It hadn't ended particularly well at Northampton, but I know how much he was relishing an opportunity where he could prove people wrong and sort of reinvent himself and prove to people that, he was worthy of managing at that level. And to transform the club's fortunes in the period of time that he did, to go up as champions, to cap it off with an FA Trophy final visit, albeit it was a defeat at Wembley, which turned out to be his last game as a manager. To have a stand named after him was just sort of the icing on top of the cake, really. And it's felt immensely throughout us as a family and our friendship group. It sports the charity's logo either side of it as well, which is a real nice touch as well, which helps spread further awareness for us. But the whole club, there's no manual or way of dealing with what happened, and I think they dealt with it exceptionally well. And I'm just so proud to see them, go on now to have another league title this season under Richie Wellens, who's done an absolutely immense job, quite similar to that of Dad, where he found the club and sort of took it on within a year, and they've gone up as champions. So rightfully back in League One next year, and hopefully the club can continue to grow from there on in.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know that everyone at Leyton Orient rightly regards your dad as a real legend of that club, and the foundations that he set in place that obviously continue to see them on the rise through the Football League, which is brilliant. So the third game you're going to get on VHS for your deserted island is a Premier League game not involving Spurs. This can be a Premier League classic. What game would you go for? Again,
this was a tricky one because I watch a lot of football. My girlfriend, often or not, will moan at me. She's like, "Why are you watching a game that's in black and white?" Or I literally live and breathe football. I have done since I was a young boy. I could have gone for Newcastle Liverpool, the 1996 4-3, that famous Stan Collymore goal. But to be honest, I was only 3 years of age. I've only since getting older watched that game back on a number of occasions, and the magnitude of that game, you literally see the camera shake, the atmosphere in that stadium, two absolute giant football clubs. So I wouldn't be able to talk in real depth about it because I wasn't old enough to really remember. So the game that I have gone for, and it's probably quite a common one, is the Manchester City versus QPR game, the 3-2 Aguero goal, which led to obviously City's title. I think that game just speaks volumes about why we all love football and why we go to home and away games, and why, you know, it's such a big talking point in the majority of people's lives, because that there was the biggest scale of them all. It went right down to the wire. You know, you're seeing pan images on the TV of the players of Man United thinking that they've got the job done and dusted, and right down to the wire, it just coughs up so much entertainment and euphoria. And, you know, you turn on Sky Sports News and you always hear that Martin Tyler Aguero, and it's just one of those moments that you will, I think, remember forever if you witnessed it. And it's, you know, gone down in Premier League history. I'll make sure that my children, if they like football, that they are aware of that game and what it meant and the magnitude of it. So I think for any football fan, just the twists and turns on that final day, capped off with a last gasp winner like that, was just absolutely sensational.
I mean, the thing that I remember as well, particularly about that game, is that when City equalise, and this is before obviously the huge success they've had in the last decade, this was right at the beginning of that. When they equalise, it cuts to the stands, and actually not that many fans are really celebrating because it almost looks too little too late. And my reaction to that is that if we're ever lucky enough to see Spurs win the league, that's the way they'll do it to us. There's not going to be a 3-0 cruise, is there? It's going to be in those circumstances, because I related to every single fan that couldn't bring themselves to celebrate at 2-2.
Yeah, 100%. I think it seems to be a common theme with any club that my dad's played for or managed. They like to do it the hard way. So if Spurs are ever in that position again, I mean, you've only got, that was another one, but I couldn't say it, that Leicester winning the league. I mean, when we were neck and neck with them, that again just proved what a competitive league we have. And even it doesn't look, I can't speak too soon, I hope they don't do it, but, you know, Arsenal this season, they finished sort of 5th last year, and it just goes to prove that this season they've competed with probably one of the greatest teams of all time, and it's going again right down to the wire. So I think, you know, in typical Tottenham fashion, if we was to ever get in that position, that would probably be of a similar vein, that you pan and see Spurs fans literally biting their nails, not too sort of upbeat about what might be to come. So yeah, funny watching as a neutral. But they are, I think anyone listening, they are the moments that you live for as a football fan, because that pure euphoria as a Man City fan in that moment, to the ultimate lows of being a Man United fan, losing out to your rivals in that manner, is just, yeah, what we live and breathe football for, I think.
And I think one of your trustees was involved in that game, was he not? Is that right?
Yeah, Sean Derry, who's a trustee of the foundation. If you actually watch that Aguero goal back, I often will not say to him, come on, Deza, you could have extended your leg a little. But he literally is a toenail away from getting a block in to stop that from happening. And you just see him fall head first to the grass. And he just says, you know, that team, that player who obviously capped it off, Aguero, was frightening. But yeah, funny how, again, there's similar links there. And it was in my thinking again when I chose that game, because Sean, being a trustee of the foundation, he features in it as well.
Amazing. Fantastic. Yeah. What a moment to be literally there in history. The second purpose of the foundation is to increase awareness and training of CPR, which can more than double the chances of someone surviving an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest if administered while waiting for a defib or an ambulance. So how can someone listening right now get CPR trained, and why is it important?
There's many ways you can do it. There's many organisations, many charities that offer the training. Obviously, for me, I'd love to be the person. We'd love to be the charitable organisation that can deliver that for them. You can book a CPR defibrillator workshop via our website, getting in contact with us. But it's vital. It honestly is a skill that everybody, I feel, should know. I feel that it should be taught in the school curriculum. I feel that if we can embed that in the future, you can only imagine, you know, in the future, there'll be a new generation of potential lifesavers, and you can't put a price on somebody's life. And I was, funny enough, I was in I was in Newport yesterday doing a defibrillator presentation, and we also presented an award to a guy called Jason Kelly. He's just received the first UK grassroots football junior hero award. He was working at the football club where we donated a defibrillator to yesterday, and they obviously didn't have a defibrillator at the time, but he saved somebody's life. He'd been and done first aid training. He knew CPR. He knew effective CPR. The nearest defib was in a local fire station, so he had to get somebody to cross a dual carriageway to go and fetch that. And this whole time, he was buying this man time. That's what it's all about. You are buying people time with effective CPR. Early intervention, early recognition, and chest compressions until you get that defib. Obviously, the defibrillator is going to be the life-saving piece of kit. But if you know how to administer effective CPR, you really are going to give somebody the best possible chance that my dad didn't have. As I mentioned earlier, that they weren't quick enough to recognise this is the trauma that he was suffering, wasn't quick enough to start the chest compressions. And ultimately, it was the brain injury that killed him. They were able to get his heart going again. They were able to pinpoint what had actually gone wrong. But it's so vital that people know what to do. But even if they don't know what to do, it's not hard to learn, and anyone can learn it. Anyone can do it. But it's just do something is better than nothing. That is my message always. Probably watched it in films or on TV. Have a go. Have a go is better. You are literally, the way to break it down, you are manually pumping the blood around the body for the heart, because the heart's obviously stopped working. You are keeping the oxygen flowing around the body. It's so vital. It's so important in any cardiac arrest.
A really important skill, and completely advocate that, learning it in school as well, because there are incredible results in places like Scandinavia where it's taught in schools. And you mentioned 1 in 10 is the survival rate in the UK. In Scandinavia, it's towards that 3 in 10. And the main key difference is knowledge. So absolutely.
Exactly that. And a lot of the research we do, it's the Scandi countries, places like Toronto as well. They're teaching it in the schools. They've got defibrillators out there. In my mind, and another guy that I've been lucky enough to sort of meet and speak with on a number of interviews that we've done surrounding the work, is a guy called Mark King. His son, Oliver King, lost his life in a swimming pool at school. And Mark's just had a law passed for defibrillators to be rolled out in all schools in the UK, which is a fantastic legacy for his son, Oliver. But Mark is the one to say that wherever there's a fire extinguisher, there should be a defibrillator above it. Any public place where there's large footfall of people, why have we not got this piece of equipment that's at our disposal out there? There's hundreds and thousands of them sitting in warehouses waiting to be distributed. And it's just a cost reason as to why they're not out there. And for me, I know it's easy for me to say because I've been affected by it. And there's other people in walks of life that have been affected by different things. There's lots of great causes out there doing fantastic work. But it's not like we're trying to invent a cure or find a cure. We've got the answer that's proven to give people a better chance. And they're sitting in boxes in warehouses rather than out on public buildings or in the community. And that's why it's so important, the work that we're doing and what we're driving. The message is get more of these pieces of equipment out there and get more people trained.
Coming back to your deserted island, the 4th game I'd like you to choose is a European club tie that you'd want to take with you. So it could be a UEFA competition, overseas game. What would you go for?
This one was easy for me because it was one of my last memories with my dad, to be honest, that will stick with me. We was watching it in the front room at home. It was the Ajax versus Tottenham second leg in the Champions League in 2019. Lucas Moura hat-trick. I mean, after 5 minutes when that first Ajax goal went in, I was in bits, as I'm sure every Spurs fan was. We were like, oh, look, typical Spurs. We get close, but we're going to fall short, which we did eventually in the final. But, for a club like Tottenham, to reach that feat and get into a Champions League final after many years of suffering and Arsenal being the Champions League ahead of Spurs, for us I think teams were really fearful that we were going to do it. I think they really were. But that night in Amsterdam, wow, whether you're a Spurs fan or not, you see the BT Sports studio footage of Rio and Glenn Hoddle jumping around. It was just mad, absolutely mad. And me and my dad were just bundling each other in the front room when that last goal went in. It was just pure euphoria. Every emotion. There was tears. There was, I think my mum thought that we'd been broken into from downstairs. She weren't really paying much attention, and we were just, and it was like, right, we're booking our flights, we're doing this, that, and the other, and it gave my dad an opportunity to go to see his beloved Spurs in a European Cup final, albeit it wasn't the result, but it was literally 2 days before he suffered his cardiac arrest. So a real special, unique feeling, because bittersweet because, I've mentioned earlier on, he goes out on a high as a champion, as a manager of Leyton Orient. The last game that he manages is at the home of football, Wembley. And then he gets to go and see the club which he holds so close to his heart in a European Cup final. I don't think for any person, if you was to write down on paper, a football person, the way that you're going to end your life and go out, you probably couldn't have picked it any better than that. So a really special game, really special moment, and one that I'll cherish forever.
Yeah. And it never, I never tire of rewatching, especially that final Moura goal. My son, I watched it with my son, who was about 10 at the time, and obviously when Spurs needed 3 goals, I actually said to him, if they get one more, it's bedtime, and thankfully I did not send him to bed. We watched the whole thing. The third purpose of the foundation is to fund those defibrillators that you spoke about in the community, that, as you say, are in those warehouses, that we need to get them out into places where they can do good. Tell me about some of the places you've placed Defibs already and where you plan to in the future.
When we started the charity, obviously it was July 2019, so probably under a month after my dad had passed away. And by March of 2020, we found ourselves in a lockdown, which was difficult. We weren't able, we'd done a lot of great work sort of building the reputation and what it is that we were intended on planning on doing. But that prevented us, that lockdown, from going out and delivering the training and the workshops and really sort of starting to drive the campaign, because all the government wanted to speak and talk about was the pandemic. It was all everybody was talking about. So for us, really, the accessibility and getting those defibs out there was the real way that we could start to make an impact early on. And with everything that we do with the charity, it's got my dad felt throughout it. Every decision we make, it's right, what would Justin wanted to have done? How would he felt about it? Would he have agreed with that? So quite early on, to mark sort of the charity launch, and we donated them to 3 places that meant a lot to my dad. One being Billericay Town Football Club, which is a local football club in Essex, where he started off his managerial career in the non-league pyramid. It's a town I've grown up in. I went to school in. I played for Billericay Town as a child, and it was the club that gave my dad his first opportunity in management. So it meant an awful lot to him. And we know a club like them, albeit in recent years they have had some success, and they signed some mad players like Jamie O'Hara, Jermaine Pennant. There was an influx of sort of money there, and the infrastructure was built, but that's been taken away from them now. And they've got really good owners there. But we wanted to give something back, and Billericay as a place and a community, that was a brilliant place for us to donate one to. We also donated one to my dad was actually an owner of a Tony and Guy hairdressing franchise, believe it or not, after he retired. And that sat on a local high street in Billericay again. And we donated it to the shop. So it sits on the outside of the shop, but it serves the whole community. It's 24-hour accessible for that entire high street that has restaurants, pubs, bars, shops. And it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Being from the area, people come up to say, what an amazing thing to do. And for Dad being a local lad as well, that continues his legacy in the area and keeps people talking about him. Donated it to other football clubs, grassroots clubs, schools before the law was obviously passed. So that's obviously every school now is going to start to get one, which is fantastic. But for us, people can apply. When we set it out, we never really knew how well received the charity was going to be. And obviously funding's always at the forefront of your mind, how we utilise the funds that people are generous enough to put towards our work and what we're trying to do. We want it to have longevity, obviously, but we didn't know how well it would be received. So in the early part, we sat down as a board and we was like, right, if we can aim to give away a minimum of 3 per quarter, that's 12 a year, then we're doing something right. So we've gone on now, I wouldn't be able to say off the top of my head, but we've delivered a number of defibrillators up and down the country, and we'll continue to do that because you really, really do see the difference that it makes. That one yesterday, as I say, you see people in tears because they know how much it means after seeing their coach save somebody's life. And that could have been one of the children playing. That could have been a parent on the sideline. And it just gives people that reassurance and that confidence that they're safe. For years to come, we hope to see, along with a load of other amazing charities that are doing great work as well, more JE3 defibrillators out there. But just in general, more defibrillators is going to be more lives saved.
And as you say, it's something you never want to use like a fire extinguisher. The metaphor's really, that's very fair, but it's there if people need it.
Exactly that. Never want them to be used. That is the first thing when I turn up at a presentation. I say, look, this is for you. We hope it's never used. But if it does, just know that it's come from a good place, from a man that would want people to have learned from his outcome and make a positive change in that respect.
The fifth and final match to take with you is an international game you'd relive forever. What have you gone for?
I might get some questions about this one, but there is thought and reasoning behind it. I've gone for Italy-England Euro 2020 final. I think, listen, it was pure heartbreak again. It was pure heartbreak. But for the first time in my life as an England fan, I really believed. I really, really, truly believed that we had the capabilities to go and do it. And especially when Luke Shaw put us 1-0 up, it was just, it brought the nation together. We've had some really tough and bad few years. And it really lifted everybody, I felt, that tournament. And we had a group of players that we could really get behind, that we were really invested in. And they took us right to the very end. And it was tough to see the way that we lost. I mean, the Bonucci goal for Italy, there's some question marks surrounding that as well. And that could have been another sort of thing of a question I think we might come on to about what we might have changed in terms of an outcome. But even the whole negativity that came afterwards with the three lads missing the penalties and the abuse that they sustained, just the way that everybody clubbed together and got around them. And I'm really excited about England for the future. I've got to be honest. I really am. And I don't recall a time in my life where I've been able to say that. It's always, been your Brazils, the teams that we've always enjoyed watching, your Brazils, your Frances, your Spains, your Germanys. Even as an England fan, it's hard to say. Every football fan enjoys watching good football. I don't care who you are. And you want to see just pure entertainment, pure football, pure class. And I really feel that England are on their way to being able to deliver that. You speak about, and it's certainly something that my dad spoke about during his footballing career, it takes a moment in your career that really hurts you and really gets you. And I think for a lot of those players, that was the first time that a lot of them, like players like Declan Rice, he's an unbelievable Premier League footballer, and I'm sure he's going to go on to great things. He hasn't probably achieved a great deal with West Ham and really felt that pain and anguish of what it felt to lose in a final of that magnitude. That probably has propelled him to go on and achieve what he's achieved to date. And I really feel for the future that the future is bright for England. And I think it boils down to that game for me and the exciting talent that we have coming through. Your Jude Bellinghams of this, Jadon Sancho's. I know he's sort of starting to come back into a bit of form with United. I really am excited, and there's no other word to describe it, really.
Going back to your dad's time at Orient, he was approaching 500 games as a manager when he got that job. In his first full season in charge, he led the O's to the National League title, winning promotion back to the Football League. He really sort of turned that team around. It seemed especially cruel his managerial career was reaching new heights at that team. What did that team and that experience at Orient and winning promotion mean to him?
It meant everything. Honestly, it really, really did. I'm in contact with a lot of the squad now. Joby McAnuff, who was his captain, is another trustee of the foundation. He had an unbelievable footballing career, and the fact that he can turn and work with some great people in the game, and he can turn to me and say that Dad is one of the best managers that he's worked under, that fills me with immense pride. And I've mentioned earlier, it's a huge football club. It really, really is. I think Orient in London is everybody's second club. If you're Tottenham's playing away and you can't get to the game, you go and watch the Orient. Or if you're West Ham's away and you can't get to the game, you go and watch the Orient. They really, really are a club that's a family club. It's a club that's together, and being in and around that, there was a party, even though they got beat after the FA Trophy final, just to celebrate the season. They've won the league, they got to a final. But to see the players, their families, not just their wives and their children, their parents, all together in one room, celebrating what they'd achieved together. Because that hadn't changed a great deal. It was very much the squad that he'd inherited when he took over, and they was on the decline. Quite a lot of players, not just this group, but other players that my dad's managed, will say he's the best man manager that they worked under. Might not necessarily have been the best coach. He had great people and great staff around him that would take care of that, but he was a great man manager and he knew how to get the best out of his players. And that was evident on that night, because I don't think there's many managers that would have orchestrated every single player's family member being in one room on the dance floor to the early hours of the morning, from toddlers up to, your 80, 90-year-olds, just enjoying that moment, because those moments in football don't come around very often. I said that to a couple of the Orient fans that I was speaking to the other day. What they've achieved in getting promoted again this year, to have 2 promotions in 6 years is unheard of, really. They don't come around very often, so enjoy them whilst they're around, and enjoy the good times, because there's plenty of lows in football as well. But yeah, it means so much. It meant so much to him. He came out and said it was his biggest and best achievement. And that's not talking about the FA Cups that he's won, the League Cups that he's won, the other promotions that he's gained. But I just think it was the magnitude and the size of that job, because it is a big club and there was pressure from day one. The fans expected, and he knew he was going to be the man that could deliver that for them. And I think it boils back to why they view him in sort of legendary status, because he backed himself to go and do that, and he done it with pure class and style.
Now, you have the opportunity to choose a current or former Premier League player to attempt a rescue mission from the island. There's a caveat. If the rescue mission fails, you are going to be stuck with them on the island. Which player would you go for?
It's easy for me. And people are probably going to go, and roll their eyes. David Beckham. For a young boy growing up loving football in the 90s, Becks was the man, wasn't he? He was golden balls. He was icon boy. Every new pair of Predators that he put on, you wanted to go out and buy. All the haircuts, the way that he was a leader, England captain. He went on to have an unbelievable career playing for Real Madrid. I think you could learn so much from him. And if that mission wasn't to quite go to plan and you end up being stuck with him, I don't think you'd be short of conversations. Just the network of people that he knows. He also does some fantastic charity work, with UNICEF and other charities that, I'd love to pick his brains on and just see how I can continue to grow JE3 and get it to the levels of UNICEF's and British Heart Foundations and charities like that. But I think, for any young lad growing up in the 90s, Beckham was the man. And you'd stand in the garden for hours in the freezing cold rain in winter months trying to perfect his free kicks. And he was just, even as a Spurs fan, I won't be embarrassed to say it, I loved football kits. Growing up as a kid, I was fortunate. I don't want to sound spoilt, but if I asked for a kit and I'd done well at school or birthdays, all I'd ask for is boots and football kits and new footballs. And I'd always get a Man United shirt with Beckham 7 on the back, or an England shirt with Beckham 7 on the back, just because you'd go in the garden and you would pretend you was him, And for me, it's an easy choice. Probably one that people go, it's an obvious and easy one, but it was an easy choice, to be honest.
And we touched upon it as well in your last answer, actually. Your dad did play in 2 cup finals for Tottenham towards the beginning and end of his Spurs career. They ended very differently. He was on the winning side for both. In 1991, when Spurs won the FA Cup against Nottingham Forest, and in 1999, when he was wrongly, I do have to say that, sent off following an altercation, let's call it, with Robbie Savage, Spurs went on to beat Leicester 1-0 to lift the Worthington Cup. How important were those winners' medals and those experiences to your dad?
Massive. And do you know what? It's funny. People who don't really, really know football wouldn't know who my dad was, even though he played for Tottenham for the length of time that he did. But he's actually the most decorated Tottenham player since I think the late 70s, early 80s. And you look at the players that have played for the club in the time since my dad's left there. Your Modric's, your Bowles, your Berbatovs, your Van der Vaarts. I'm reeling off top class players here that everybody knows of and will have heard of. And the fact that Justin Edinburgh, is the most decorated Spurs player in that time is a bit of a question mark, really. And that's me saying it as his son, you know. So for him, he joined from Southend United as a real young player. He didn't get picked up by Southend until, you know, sort of 16, 17, and done his YTS there and broke into the first team. Joined Spurs initially on loan. And within, you know, sort of a 12-month period, he found himself playing in a FA Cup final alongside Gazza and Lineker and Gary Mabbott and so many other legends of that team. Would have been a massive eye-opener for him. You know, he'd been watching Gazza and Lineker in Italia 90 previous year, and then he's playing in a final with them. The stuff of every boy's dream, I think, you know. The FA Cup, I think, as years have gone on, I don't know why it is. I just feel that it's lost that touch a little bit of what it used to be. It's a game that I often watch of Dad in that final, and obviously what happened with Gazza and his injury, and that proved to be sort of his last game for Spurs. But I remember Dad sort of explained to me when he was a child growing up that the FA Cup, it would just be the whole day. It didn't matter what channel you put on. It was from the moment you opened your eyes, it was just the build up to that game. Whereas now you probably don't get much build up until an hour and a half before the game. It just feels that it's not as special as it used to be, but hopefully that will come back. But then the League Cup final, well, that was the one game that I remember. I actually had my face put. I was full Spurs kit. My face was painted half white, half blue, and I run out of this. I was sat with my aunt and my uncle. My mum was sat with all the other wives and girlfriends of the players. And once he got sent off, I actually attempted to run out of Wembley Stadium. I was just inconsolable because the majority of the crowd were booing him. And as any youngster, what would I have been? I was probably 7 or 8 years of age. It's heartbreaking to hear people booing your dad. And any listener who is a football fan listening, that is one thing that I will say when I'm on things like this. You never know how affecting it can be to a family. There's not many jobs in the world, whether as a manager or as a player, that people suffer the amount of abuse that they do. And just remember that those people have got families and they have got friends. I know you've got love for your football club and no one wants to see a club doing bad or a player performing bad. But like Davinson Sanchez the other week for Spurs, I can't get behind that. I can't agree with that whatsoever. It runs deeper than just playing football. These people have got family and they've got children. But back to it, I tried to attempt to run out of Wembley Stadium. And then Alan Nielsen, my auntie consoled me, got me back in. And then as we sat back down, Alan Nielsen pokes in a header and he got his winner's medal. He got to come back on the pitch. But at the time, listen, Savage, that game was winding people up. He had that about him. He had a great career. He's since come out and apologised, which is fair play. And, you know, at times people will do what it takes to win football matches. I don't condone cheating. Dad, when you look at it, shouldn't have raised his hands in the first place. You can't raise your hands in football and expect to get away with it. But I think for him, nearing the end of his Spurs career, that was probably his lowest low, because I think he felt that he'd cost the team then and there. But it was a bit of relief, let's put it that way, when Alan Nielsen scored that goal and they won. And those two medals meant absolutely everything to him. And they do, I mean, quite often they're kept somewhere very safe now. But when I get to go and see them, and to hold a FA Cup medal or a League Cup medal is, it's quite bizarre that that's your dad's doing.
So I'm going to give you the chance now to delete a game from the history books by taking it to the deserted island with you. Is there a game that comes to mind that you would banish to room 101 forever, and would it have changed the course of history?
Yeah, it would have. And this is a bit of a cop-out answer. Any game from the Arsenal Invincible season, had any team stepped up to the plate and beaten them, I wouldn't have had to listen, because I'm from a family of Arsenal fans. My dad was actually an Arsenal fan growing up as a kid, to the extent my cousin is called Merson after Paul Merson. That's how big a Gooner family I'm from. So even now, Dad's not around. Obviously, his love for Tottenham grew as he played for him, and that Arsenal were by the wayside then. So, but since Dad's not around, I don't have his reinforcements anymore to back me up when Spurs are doing particularly bad. So, you know, I'm often have to sit round families on a Sunday and listen to, you've never gone a season unbeaten or blah. And I don't think we ever will. I don't think many clubs ever will. It's, you know, a fantastic feat. But if I could delete that moment from football, that would be, for me, growing up, being in school, surrounded by Arsenal fans. And even, I don't know why West Ham fans feel that they can just jump on any bit of abuse that comes Spurs' way, but they seem to do it and enjoy it. And I think they get a buzz out of it. So whatever takes the currency. But yeah, for us, I think any Spurs fan would love to delete that moment. It didn't matter who it was, it didn't matter when it was. Just to beat Arsenal and stop that from happening would be my room 101 moment, I think.
Okay, that's it. It's changed. It's gone. The record's gone. So as we come to the end of the chat now, Charlie, you've already gone a huge way to helping secure your dad's legacy with the foundation, the impact that you've already had. What are your ambitions for this work? Where and how do you want him to be remembered?
My ambition is that by the time that I'm no longer here, I want the world to be in a better place through the education and training of, what we're doing here, and want more defibs out there. Listen, the ultimate would be if we can get that law passed in his name, Justin's law. I don't think there's any better legacy than that there's actually a law that states in his memory that we've made as a family, as a charity, a real difference, because it's going to benefit everybody. And for me to be able to give back, for us to be able to give back, Dad was all about giving back as well. If you were fortunate enough to meet him or come across him in his path, he always had time for people. So yeah, I hope that when I'm no longer here, we've made some part or played some part in the outcomes of cardiac arrests being in a much better place than what we found them in when Dad suffered his incident. And just, you're never going to get it. There's not one person that's come up to me since I've lost my dad that's had a bad word to say about him. It'd be quite bizarre for someone to come up to me and say, oh, your dad was this, that, and the other. But he generally was one of the good guys. He generally wanted to share his knowledge, his experience of the game. I know that he has had a massive impact on certain people's careers, players that are playing now. He's literally changed their life by giving them the belief and the platform to go and express themselves and go on to have great careers themselves. So yeah, for me and for us as a family and the charity, if we can change the outcomes of cardiac arrest and it be in a better place than what we found it, then I think, that would be fantastic. And I'm sure in the future as well, there's going to be other areas that will, let's not forget, we're approaching our 4-year anniversary. We'll continue to grow as well. I'm sure there's other arms and things that will start to branch off of JE3 and ways that we can add value from just those 3 core areas. Just continuing to spread the message and educate people, I think.
Finally, for the desert island, we're going to give you a football. We're going to task you with recreating an iconic Premier League goal. You've potentially got the rest of time to do it in. Which goal are you going to recreate to perfection?
Well, if I could have him there with me to teach me how to do it, that would make it even better. But I'm going for David Bentley's goal for Tottenham against Arsenal at the Emirates in 2008. All day long, I love David Bentley. Like literally, when he signed for Spurs, I thought he had the potential to be the next Beckham. Technique-wise, he was absolutely frightening. You could see he was a right sort of joker of the change room, pouring the ice bucket over Harry Redknapp when we secured Champions League. But yeah, so he probably wouldn't be a bad one either to get stuck on an island with. But yeah, just that goal, I don't care how many times you watch it back, it's just pure class. And to do it against Arsenal as well and to give it to the fans, yeah, loved every single minute of it. And obviously, him being a former Arsenal player, he didn't give a monkeys. He was like, that's by the wayside. I'm giving it now. I'm Tottenham through and through. And yeah, what a goal, what a finish, and what an entertaining game as well. That 4-4 result, right down to the wire. But yeah, I think I'd be on the island for a while, and that ball might be back by the time I perfect it. But yeah, definitely that would be up there for me as the goal that I tried to recreate.
It's going to be quite a lot of running back and forth for you, but I mean, you'll be
or swimming to go and fetch it out the sea. Yeah.
Well, that's a cracking goal to recreate. Well, Charlie, thank you very much for your time today. Tell us, how can people get involved and support the JE3 Foundation? What can they do?
Look, every penny that's raised goes towards helping us achieve what we're setting out to achieve. As we've covered, access, training and campaigning, there are 3 key areas. But for anyone that doesn't know about us, I encourage you, head over to je3foundation.com. There's loads of fantastic information on there, ways you can get involved. There'll be future fundraising events that people can come along to. We do a whole host of things: charity football games, comedy nights, golf days, you name it. There's a whole host of things and ways that people can get involved in that aspect. But if you want to learn the skills, if you want to inquire about a defibrillator, all of that information's on there. And I think it will really sort of open your eyes to just what and how much work needs to be done, because as we've touched on earlier, the statistics are shocking and we really, really need to improve on those. So come along, come on the journey and get involved and get behind it.
Well, we'll put a link to the website in the comments and the description. We'll include a petition for Justin's Law as well to the description of the show.
So if you want, please sign that. We need to get as many signatures. That's one thing I always forget. Any signature and pass it on to friends, family, work colleagues. If we can get to that 100,000 signatures mark, the conversation has to be started, and that will help us massively.
You'll find the link for that in the description of this show. Charlie Edinburgh, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck in continuing the fantastic work that you're doing.
Thank you very much for having me on, Carl. It's been a pleasure. Really appreciate it.
So that was Charlie Edinburgh. What an inspiring guy. The legacy that he is creating and continuing for his dad, Justin, is so inspiring. I felt so inspired by that entire conversation, just the unthinkable that they've all been through as a family and the positivity that they have responded to in that, which, as Charlie said himself, was his dad's way of doing things, and he's continued that. Please support the JE3 Foundation however you can. First off, really easy, sign the petition for Justin's Law. I've put it in the description of this episode, and if we can get enough signatures on that, it will be debated in Parliament. Now, it seems obvious, as Charlie put it much better than I can. The defibrillators are sat in warehouses around the country, and there are places that need them that do not have them. The gap is funding. So by supporting the Justin Edinburgh 3 Foundation, by signing that petition to ensure that defibrillators are placed in places where people are exerting themselves, they will save lives. It only has to save one life to be worthwhile, but I assure you it will save many more if we can get that through. So please, if you've been inspired by today's show, as I have, please go and sign Justin's Law and support the JE3 Foundation however you can. One of the things that really stuck with me about the show was the impact that Charlie mentioned about the wider families when players are receiving abuse, be that on the pitch or these days, I guess, on social media. And that really kind of stuck with me. And that's something we should all bear in mind. You know, footballers are human beings. A really interesting chat. And I really enjoyed chatting Spurs with him, talking about better days as a Spurs fan, let's be honest. And I am expecting one or two Spurs fans to be joining the show this week. Welcome along. Thank you. And I hope you'll hang around. Just a recommendation for you in particular. There is a book called Be in That Number, all about Tottenham Hotspur's 2018-19 season. And it's all about their supporters clubs around the world as Spurs unexpectedly reach the Champions League final. It is a fantastic read, and I can vouch for that because I wrote it. Shameless self-promotion plug alert. So you can find that on Amazon, Be in That Number by Carl Jones, if you've enjoyed this show and you want to relive that season when things were much less miserable than they are currently. But that is it for season 1 of When Football Began Again. I will be back in the autumn. I've got some fantastic guests already lined up. One or two of those are already in the bag and recorded as well. I have ex-players coming on the show. I've got some brilliant journalists and broadcasters and comedians who are all going to come and share their various memories of the Premier League era. We'll be kicking back off with 97-98 as a season review and picking up the Premier League table with Bradford City in 46th place. These are just some of the things that I've got coming up in season 2. I hope you'll come back and join me, which brings me to my final plea of the series. Please, if you can, share the show with people who you think might enjoy it. Leave me a review, especially on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so that other people find this show in their recommended items. We have grown and grown, to be honest, bigger than I thought the show could ever be in season 1. However, I am petrified that none of you will be here by the autumn. So do me a favour, help me grow it over the summer months. I'm hoping to put out some best bits compilations as well, and they might be really helpful in terms of sharing that with someone who you think might like the show. But for now, this is it. I can't keep the show up every single week, unfortunately. So I will be back in September with some brand new guests, brand new ideas, and the same features that hopefully by this point, if you're a regular listener, you know and love. So go back and have a listen to some of the shows you may have missed. Maybe you don't think you'd enjoy a episode about Swindon Town's Premier League history. Maybe you're right, I don't know, but give it a go, and I will meet you back here in September. Keep an eye out for the Best Bits compilations, hopefully over the summer months. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for sharing the show and leaving your reviews and engaging with it. I really appreciate it. We'll be back for some more Premier League nostalgia in the autumn. Thanks for listening to When Football Began Again. Join us again next time for another slice of Premier League nostalgia. In the meantime, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, find us on socials, and spread the word with all your Premier League loving mates.